lights all fade, when the stage is gone, when the debts ain't paid. Just how big a boy are you when the chips fall, when the fish fly? Just how big a boy are you when the truth comes, when the lies die? Big talk ain't the weight you carry. Truck in a no-name town, dust on your tongue, rain won't come down. What's the measure of a man with nothing to show? When the wind cuts deep, when the seeds don't grow. Just how big a boy are you when the walls crack, when the earth shakes? How big a boy don't mean a thing at all. You can puff your chest, you can raise your chin, but the mirror don't care about the fire within. How far will you go? How much will you lose when it's blood for blood and you gotta choose? Just how big a boy are you when the tide turns, when the sky falls? How big a boy are you when the pain comes, when the last call? Big talk don't weigh a damn
Oh, yeah. About the way I feel tonight. Boot kicker. And yeah, well, it's been a frustrating afternoon with a lot of stuff, starting with internet and some other things that I had to fix. And then Rumble decided it wanted to be down for a minute, for me anyway. And I think we're close to one of them's up for sure. And we're trying to get the other one up now. And I think there it goes. Okay. All right. Sorry. Intended to being on much earlier. Hello. Hey, it's your birthday. Well, happy birthday to you. And hello, Daniel. Blessings to you. And Wesley and everybody else. Give us a follow, a like, share. All right. This is the Southern Frown Soundstage. And I am the Cornbread Man with the Southern Fried Patriot Cornbread Nation. Go. So I'm sorry about that. You know, that's just the frustrating, man. It's just like everything is good, then it's bad. And we're trying to work with our internet provider and find out. Thank you for the follow and sorry for the delay. We hope to get this show in. Hopefully it won't look horrible. I've been rebooting the system and trying to work with them. It's been a number of things. But anyway, we're going to try our best to get this show in because I've already canceled it once. And we want to talk about the last show we talked about, because we're doing this series. The first band we covered was Tesla. We did 2 shows for Tesla, 2 shows for Def Leppard. So we started the formation of the band up through on through the night and high dry. We are at the moment of Pyromania. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that album and the lead up to it. So as we left the band in High and Dry. They would tour like crazy with bands like AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne, Motley Crue. You know, they were just a young band, hungry, on fire, ready to go. We're blessed to get to talk to or work with, not just talk to, but work with Mutt Lange, who would even become a bigger figure from High and Dry to Pyromania. They had a problem, though, as they went back in the studio, right back in to cut Pyromania, which is amazing that it came out the way it did, which some people were mad that Pyromania was a little more slicker. They had all great tunes. It's a great album to me, but it was a little slicker, a little more polished. That's the Mutt Lange style, though, than it was High and Dry. And for all those fans that say, well, that's the last great album they made was High and Dry, that's fine if you feel that way. But Pyromania was a kick butt album, and I'm going to spend some time here tonight. Don't know if I'll get to Hysteria or not, but we're going to talk about Pyromania. The lead up to Pyromania was a little, you know, hey, listen, they were a young band. They were partying a lot. Everybody in the band drank heavily. The two heaviest drinkers were Pete Willis and the late, great Steve Clark. No doubt about that. Legendary drinkers. Later on, when Phil Collin came in, the same thing. He eventually got clean. Story for another show. But Steve Clark and Pete Willis drank. Now, Pete and Steve drank as heavy as each other. One didn't drink heavy than the other. They were both heavily drinking. I mean, basically, you would say alcoholics because they drank real heavily. And, of course, we know it took Steve down. And it took Pete out of the band. So they go back into the studio to make Pyromania, which set the world on fire. It absolutely set the world on fire. This album was right at 45 minutes long. It was recorded in London. Of course, Mutt Lange was, you know, Robert John Mutt Lange was the producer. This was recorded in 1983. And there were 4 singles that was released from the album. We'll go through the songs in a few minutes. And both sides are great. And I bought this album when they were an MTV era band that really got heavy airplay for a little bit of High and Dry, a whole lot of Pyromania. The videos really helped, set American kids on fire for watching Def Leppard and buying the album. I mowed a yard. Me and my best friend in life. He was murdered years later. Unfortunately, just a few years later, actually, 6 years later. But I still have this album. It's very special to me. Not only because I like the band, but because my best friend was murdered. We mowed somebody's yard and made $10. We took that $10, $5 apiece. That don't sound like much nowadays. Back then it was pretty good. You could get an album at the record store for $10. You could get them cheaper than that, but you could get new albums for $10. We went down, we put our money together, and we bought Pyromania. So that album was played a lot on his new sound system that he had. His dad had bought him one of those JCPenney jam up things. I mean, it would rock the street. Just an amazing sound system. I forget what kind it was, but we were listening to things like ZZ Top back then. AC/DC, of course. Rod Stewart, Blondes Have More Fun. I mean, these were albums we were listening to, and many others. But Def Leppard became a central album for us, and we love the videos, we love the songs. And it really did change the landscape. A lot of bands copied Def Leppard after this album, and hence why the band wanted to do something different. They didn't want Pyro 2 when they went back in the studio. The problem they were having, they had great songs. They were working with Mutt. Everything was going great. Steve never loved the studio, but he was the riff master, and he came up with a lot of great stuff. In fact, he fixed Photograph. They were jammed up, stuck on that. And he fixed the riff in Photograph. You know, they talked about that in documentaries, how they were so excited when they heard that riff off Photograph. They said, that's it, and just set them on fire. The problem they had was Pete Willis is coming in drunk, he's a great guitar player. He was a little short guy, he looked more like AC/DC height than he did Leppard. Joe's about 6'4". Pete was 5-something barely. I mean, he was a little guy. Played big, though. Love his sound. Very bluesy player. I love Pete Willis. In fact, I hate what happened to him. And he says it probably saved his life. But as the story goes, they had a lot of everything laid down. They had the basic tracks laid down. It was time for the solos. And Pete couldn't come in straight. I mean, he come in, he's falling all over the place. And apparently the band many times on the previous tours, had found him so drunk he couldn't do anything, and they were embarrassed by this. Now, the difference was, and Joe has said this, that each Steve and Pete drank equally. The difference is that Steve would be apologetic, like, I'm so sorry, I know I drank too much. And Pete Willis, when he was drunk, he wanted to fight. He had that little man syndrome, if you want to call it that, and he wanted to fight. And they had gave him chance after chance after chance after chance. They know they're on the very verge of something major. They're working with one of the top-notch producers. They've been on the road. They've got their chops down. They've got the songs. They've got the riffs. They've got everything they need. They're ready for something big, and it is big. But Pete's getting in the way. So he gets credit for this album. He was all over it. He had already laid down a bunch of tracks, but he come in one day, and he just basically had to be sent home. Joe's embarrassed. Once again, he talks to the band. He says he's got to go. We just can't do this. He's going to hold up everything, that we want to do. He's not able, coherent. He can't perform in the studio, and we're just sick of it. So they even told him, because he was trying to talk his way out of it. And, they said, listen, it's the same story every time. You're going to do better, but you don't. And unfortunately, Def Leppard and Pete Willis parted ways. Now, you go back and look at the early videos and audios of that band, and he's a killer player. I love some of the stuff he did afterwards too. Unfortunately, he got out of the music business, and he's a property manager from what I understand, and lives a good life back in England. Of course, they're all from Sheffield. The original core band was from Sheffield, England, and this band, just kicked butt out on tour. I mean, they were it was getting hard for bands. Bands were getting a little leery about having them open them up for them, which would prove very much so on the Pyromania tour. They were bands that were a little leery about bringing them in, because they had started to see. It's kind of like the early days of Van Halen. I mean, when Van Halen and Black Sabbath were grouped together, bad grouping. Van Halen just blew them off the stage, and that was a bad thing for them. But they were at that point. They were almost ready to be headliners, but not quite yet. So Pete he's fired. He's let go. Now, all these bands run in the same circles. Phil Collin, and some people have never liked Phil Collin in the band. I like Phil. I think he's a studio hound, man. He loves the studio. He's always writing. He's very central. Him and Joe are very tight. He can play. His style is different. It just is. Of course, he was in Girl, the glam band. He'd even stayed at Joe's house. They all seen each other at shows. Phil, a little bit different course. They'd run into each other more London for him, if I remember right. But they knew him, and they had called him up before to put him on notice, like, hey, we might need you. Can you learn 30 songs or 20 something songs or whatever they needed? He said, yeah, we can do it. And he had actually gotten ready. But he was not called, and they gave Pete another chance and another chance and another chance. And I think that's when they were on tour in America. And so they send Pete out, much frustrated. He just doesn't want to work with this guy because he can't get no work done. And he's a hard charger. He's a hard worker. He's very, very demanding in the studio. It's not for the weak at heart, and all the band members had a hard time with it, but they knew that he was making them better, and this was going to be a massive project for them. So they give Phil the call up. According to Steve Clark, Steve didn't want to do 10 solos. He just wanted to split them, somebody to come in and do that. And Phil comes in, and as Steve joked about it in one of the videos, and he looks at him and says, and he never left. They were a best of friends and became known as the Terror Twins. I've got a No Guitar magazine with them on the front, and their Def Leppard robes and big old out slippers, as they were the best of friends, and yes, party boys together. They drank just as heavily as before, but they got work done. Phil came in the studio, and he threw one solo down, and Mutt was blown away. And that told the band, this is the guy. And I don't know if it's actually true or not. They say he never signed a contract. He He just hung around and just become part of the band. I'm sure somewhere along the line, HR got involved and put his name on something, but that's kind of the joke about that he never was really like, just help us out. And he just stayed around. He's as much part of that band as anybody. And he's been there. Well, even Vivian Campbell's been there longer than Steve was ever there, unfortunately, because of his health and, of course, for Pete and everything. I mean, 30 years plus, I think, now for Vivian. But anyway, so they get their guy. And the early videos, if you look at the breakdown, and there's great websites you can go to, and you look at who does the lead, who does the solos on each of the albums. Sometimes the album tells you, sometimes it don't. But it's just interesting that the solos that Phil did became the songs that were the singles. They, of course, Photograph, Rock of Ages, Foolin', and Too Late for Love. But who I mean, you could just remember some of those iconic solos that Phil did, and loved them. I mean, they was great songs, mostly great videos. Foolin', Steve hates. He said, Joe hates. He thought he looked a little dorky in that one, swinging that fake sword around. But it's a great song. Is it the best video? Probably not. And looking back, they cringe a little bit at the women in the cages for Photograph. You got to consider that's what videographers were doing at that time. It was the whole rock and roll thing. But Photograph was the game changer for them. That's still one of the most demanded songs to be heard. It has a great, the whole thing about it is it's really catchy and talking about, Marilyn Monroe. And it's just, you can take that song in a lot of ways. That was the number one single released, and that was January of 83. And then the next single was Rock of Ages, June of 83, and then Foolin' in August. And then a song that I love, I just love, Too Late for Love. It's something really different for the band, but I like that one. But when you get down and you look at the album, and I love to go how the albums look from front to back, because as I've said before, there's a lot of thought that was put into that, how an album plays out. Nowadays, it's all just digital download. But an album had a journey to it. An album took you on a journey. An album was a lot of thought put into that. And there's not a bad song on this album. I mean, I don't think. I think they're all any one of these songs were singles. And I don't know why. And it's just until recently that the band, I know they have a lot of great songs, but Coming Under Fire was a song they never played live. They have since started doing that. All the times I saw them, 15 times, never got to hear them play that song. They wouldn't say it. They played every other song on here. But when you look at I started off with Rock Till You Drop, that song is still played on classic radio a lot. Even though it wasn't one of those singles, it is played a lot. Of course, Photograph. And one of my favorite songs on the whole album is Stage Fright. I love what they did with that at the start of the Hysteria tour, and playing in the round. And that was the first time I didn't get to see them on the Pyromania tour. I saw the videos, I saw some clips and stuff. I never got to see them on that, but the Hysteria tour I saw. And then Stage Fright was the song they started out with. Of course, the Clint Eastwood line from Dirty Harry, and then they would go into Stage Fright. I still love that. And In the Round, In Your Face, you get all that stuff. I love that. I love that. It's just amazing tour. But here they were. They had Stage Fright, Too Late for Love, and then a very different song. Apparently, they set up all night watching The Deer Hunter one night and come out with Die Hard the Hunter. Love that song. That's a killer song. I love some of the guitar work by Steve in that. But it's a very different song. And actually, I think on one of the Vegas residencies, they actually started out with that song. Very different. They kicked off with that song on the residency. You wouldn't think of that being a kickoff song. They decided to do it. It's a very long song for them. I mean, it's over 6 minutes long. So even back then, that was really long for a song. And then side two is just as kicking as the first side, Foolin', which had wasn't it Foolin' that had the whole, it was switched back and forth in the recording, and you get the different, when you got headphones on or speakers and, studio, you hear that. Rock of Ages, again, another big hard hitting single. Coming Under Fire, which I mentioned, which I thought was never appreciated. Just so many good songs. It got kind of lost. Action, Not Words. That's another. When I listen to this album now, those are two songs I hear that I kind of listen to first. I like Action, Not Words. And then, one of the very different kind of songs, even more than Die Hard the Hunter, was Billy's Got a Gun. And that was kind of a haunting song along with Too Late for Love. this album just kicked butt. It took you on a journey. In fact, there was a lot of buzz about this. I mean, they had played it for people, demos. People got to hear it. The buzz was out there. Everybody knew that this album was coming out, and they knew that it was kicking butt. All the people that heard it. In fact, there's a story that Joe tells about what's the singer? One of the singers for the English bands, and he basically had heard it and was all depressed, like, you just put me out of a job. And Joe gets mad, like, what are you talking about, man? Get out there and up it, man. Up the game. You're a legend. Make it better. Phil Lynott. And he was like depressed about it. Like, heard the album, was like, wow, this is like something, way different, way better. And Joe's a student of rock, man. He probably knows as much as anybody about especially English rock, but he knows it all. He keeps up with it. I mean, he's a student of it. And it really bummed him out that the guy had that kind of attitude. It's like, no, man, go back in the studio, just up the game, make us work hard. But here's this young, athletic, good-looking band, got the girls excited about it. The guys love the crunch of the band, and they hit the road. And they started out, still they're trying to start out. They started out kind of small again. But they got on, and this was bad for Billy Squier. Bad. And I was a big Billy Squier fan. I can still remember sitting in Atlanta watching a live show that he was doing. I didn't get to go to it, but I was watching as he was in Atlanta playing live, and they were like streaming it over the TV. I was a big fan of Billy Squier, still am. But unfortunately for Billy, he had the ballad that come out with that crappy video. And he talks about this. He said it killed his career. I can't remember the name of it now, but it's really cheesy. It didn't have the edge in it. So here's what would happen. Everybody knew that. This is what happens when you put on an opening act that's on the way up. I can imagine with some of those bands that had like the Van Halens or whoever opening up for them, because what would happen is exactly what happened with Leppard and Squier is people were coming out to hear Leppard and then leaving. And it was bad. It was bad. So Leppard goes from being an opening band. They've always opened, always been on the double, triple bills, playing smaller clubs by themselves all throughout England and everywhere they could play. That's what you do. You just keep playing. And nothing against Billy Squier, but this was a bad match. It was a really bad match. I'm sure he was ticked off about it. And they would coming out and with that energy. And by the way, all the running around the stage and stuff that they did. That was a game changer because a lot of bands just stayed in the same spot. Now they've gotten older now. They don't move as much, but back in those days, they were running all over the place, switching sides, being all on one side, switching around. I mean, they just did that. And it's very much broke the traditional mold of, you're thinking of a band, Black Sabbath or Deep Purple or whoever, they're standing in front of the stage and everybody, basically doesn't move that much. Here's this band, they're all over the place, and people, all into that. And so they get on the tour with Squier, and people were leaving the show. I mean, they were hearing the Leppard, and they just walk out, and it was killing. So Leppard they get them off that tour, and they're starting to sell out. So it's pretty amazing. You start out when the albums, they hit the road again. They started out in some clubs. And by the end of the tour, they were millionaires. By the end of the tour, the last date on the tour was Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego. I think it was 55,000 fans, sold out, just killed it. So their star is just going up and going up and going up with this album. And with the continuing being on the road, they really conquered America. They hadn't really conquered England. They had fans there, but America was their bread and butter. America was where they made their money. America was, that was it. So here's this hot band. I mean, 3 really kick butt albums right out of the gate, even though it took a little while for On Through the Night to get the full appreciation, I think, from people. High and Dry is well respected, not a bad song on it. Some like some of On Through the Night, some like all of it. Some it's very different, but it really showed what they were going to become. And then Pyromania, it just hits you in the face. And Mutt Lange, huge. And if you look, this album at one time during that year, which is pretty doggone amazing. And I was trying to look back, and I think it was 100,000 albums a week at one point that this album was pumping out. It sold 6 million in the U.S. Yes, for much of the year, 100,000 copies. Man, brother, that's moving some albums. They rivaled that with Hysteria at one point. They were even doing more than this, but this was unheard of. And so it has since sold over 10 million certified diamond, and continues to sell. They've produced some of the songs and stuff. Some of that was due to some agreements they had. They went back and did a lot of their lineup, their library of songs. But they they had some interesting things on here. The intro that Rick Allen does. That they said was just a way for Mutt to count off. To the band. Instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, so you have the whole talk about that. There's a little bit of mystery there. The videos kind of added into that. Who was this guy? They don't know how to label them. I mean, some would say they were pop rock. Some would say pop hard rock. Some would say they got pop metal, hair metal. They get labeled into many different things. And their influences, as we said last show, is all over the place. I mean, they had influences from everything from AC/DC to Led Zeppelin to Queen, Mott the Hoople, and you can keep going. I mean, and you can see all that in there. And for those fans that wanted them to be that next AC/DC, they never wanted that. They didn't want to be that. So, you might as well give it up. That's not what they wanted to be. If they really want to be more like Queen with a little bit of AC/DC and Led Zeppelin thrown in, I mean, that's, the rockers in the band were Steve Clark. I mean, but then Joe's all over the place, his influences. And of course, Phil was very much into the, some of the glam stuff. And, Rick Savage was a little bit more into the harder stuff. But they've had some of their music has had influences, everything from country, to hard rock. I wouldn't say metal, but it's all over the place. And you can hear those influences in everything they do, even to this day. And it is a little different sound. I mean, it was in the early days, the Jackson guitars and the Randall amps and all that stuff. It had a uniqueness to it. It really did. And of course, the layering that Mutt Lange did increased on this album much more than High and Dry, and then would really show up in Hysteria. But you could hear that in this album, some of the layered stuff. He was really starting to work with the band on some of that. But give him credit; they come up with great songs, the words, the music, and everything. And it was hard. I mean, Joe talks about how, he just recently talked about this because, David Coverdale is retired, and he credits David for being a friend and helping him. He'd go and listen to David Coverdale throw a line down. They were recording at the same studio at one point, and he encouraged Joe because Joe was, Mutt was pushing him to the limits of what his voice could do. And, and he'd go in and listen to Coverdale and be like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. So, it was just one of those things where he pushed everybody to their limit. And I think that's another reason that it was breakdowns for Pete, because the alcohol, and Steve as well, Steve Clark. It was very hard for him. There were times that Rick Allen threw the drumsticks at the studio. Like I give up. I mean, the guy, has you doing the same little note over and over and over again, it just drives you batty, and for bands that just used to get in the studio and playing a live version, that's not the way he works. And so you got to really get used to that. So they come out and they just kill it, man. And they go through the tour. They are, they land back in England and they're millionaires. I mean, they're given the gold card, they're millionaires. And instantaneously, like now they discover, because they never had no money, now they discover what it means to pay that English tax bill, which is half. And they were like, oh my gosh, I mean, they're like, they got all this money, but England says, thank you for being very successful. We're taking half your money. So the band from that point on has been tax exiles. The only one I think that still lives in England is Rick Savage. Joe lives in Dublin. Rick and Phil and Vivian all live in America. They've got family here and stuff. And, they now they do everything on the internet, send the parts and everything. They don't even get in the same studio, although they have recorded at Joe's house. But, like Elton John and many others became tax exiles. Ozzy, you can name it. They came to America, paid cheaper tax, and they, go on tour. They're right here in America already. But they found out what that bill was going to be. It's very expensive, So here they are. I mean, they lost a band member. They bring in Phil, massive tour, superstars, and you think, boy, they're just on the verge of even greater, which they were. Who knew it was going to be 4 years later? I mean, who could figure? Everybody thought they just were stopped being a band because on that New Year's Eve, when Rick Allen's out with his girlfriend and he goes around, in the Corvette or whatever it was, I think it's Corvette, and it's raining and there's a guy and he's trying to block him and all this stuff that goes on. They're young, he's a millionaire, he's got the girl on his side and he's got the sports car. He's made it, and then he wipes out, and everything changed for Def Leppard at that point. Everything changed. By the grace of God, Rick wrecks out in a place where there's a farmer who knows how to do some things, and his wife is a nurse. And in a crazy way, I mean, here's Rick, he's got the seatbelt on wrong or something. I've heard different stories about this, but it doesn't really matter. Whatever it was, he lost the arm. So they get the arm, they put it on us. They get the news. It sounds like it's just like a bad joke. Like, this can't be happening. You know how in shock you are when somebody calls you and says, Rick's been in an accident. He's lost his arm. What? He's a drummer. What? And he loses the arm. They pack it on ice. So he has the arm. He loses the arm all in 24 hours. He has the arm. He's driving down the road. He has the wreck. He loses the arm. They reattach the arm, and due to infection, they take the arm off again. A wicked event. Of course, he probably was out for all of that or most of it and was in shock. Certainly, the farmer talks about that. I mean, he's walking through the fog and the rain, blood squirting out. I mean, he's in shock. The girlfriend is screaming. It's a horrible scene, obviously. And the band is in different places, and they're getting these calls, and they're like, "What?" And of course, they rush to his bedside, and by the time they get there, I mean, he's lost the arm. He's not going to have the arm. And, there's a couple of people that had talked to him to encourage him. And, they had mentioned to him that, you could still play drums. And he just, you got to give this guy a lot of credit for spirit. But, instantaneously, and Phil talks about this, and Joe, they come in to see him, and he's going, I'm going to play drums still. They're like, there's no way. I mean, the guy's they've got him doped up. He's out of his mind, but he was already working out some of that stuff with his feet. So it's an amazing story. I mean, here's this massive album. They're at the top of their game. They're as known all over the world, especially America. They've got this. I mean, it's just being played all over the place, and MTV is rocking it and everything. And it's well thought of. I mean, they're thought, okay. Q Prime and all those folks they worked with, like, this band's on the way up. He's, you got the John Kolodners of the world and different ones that were working with them, and they've got the best of the best as far as management, as all the stuff that they needed to be successful. I mean, they, it's like Joe, they've got the guitars, they've got the drums, they've got the looks, they've got, the songs. They got it. They got the producer, they've got the management, they've got it all. And then Rick loses his arm. And that starts 4 years of hell. I mean, that's really what it was. I want to go through some of that in this show, and next week we'll pick up with Hysteria. Pop in the chat your favorite Pyromania songs, if you like them all, or if you like one or two or whatever. This is a great album. By the way, on this album, they started working with the artist that they've worked with for a long time. And I'm not sure if he did the last ones, but what is it, Satari or whatever his name is. And he started doing a lot of their artwork and stuff, which was really recognizable too. I bought some of that stuff, collectible stuff from around the world at record shows back in the day. And, stuff that was released all over the world that would lay out and, tell a story together. And a lot of that was by that artwork and stuff. It was pretty cool. But, Rick's lost his arm. He's got a long, long, long road to recovery. And really, that recovery is still going on today. He went through 20 years of really PTSD, drug use. It's something that him and Steve would he would be telling Steve, you don't need to drink so much. He'd say, what about you? And, Rick was trying to mask his feelings and stuff about what had happened with drugs and alcohol as well. And it was like they would go out drinking together. And, for Steve, that's a whole nother story we'll talk about later. It's a tragic story. I love Steve Clark. Just still love that. I'll have to show an album next week. I still have a picture disc album. It's my favorite thing. I need to put it on the wall in here in the studio. But and then there's a lot of bad events started happening. They tried to work. Mutt got tied up. He was toasted out. He couldn't. And he sort of left the scene. So they bring in Jim Steinman. Bad decision. They ended up scrapping like the album's worth of stuff. Like just got nothing done. They spent tons of money in studio time. They're drinking like fish. Rick's trying to recover, and they don't even know if he's going to be able to do this thing. And they're getting nowhere fast. I mean, they have loose ideas. They've got songs like Animal that takes many iterations. It's laying around. That song, and there was some others that they had, but they had nothing really. I mean, nothing. Everything got scrapped. They spent all this money. Then, fortunately, Mutt comes back in the scene. And it took so long. And I can remember during the gap, I mean, this is before that people really on the internet paying attention. You just know that there's no Leppard songs out, there's no new album. And it wasn't like you did today. You pick up the phone and say, well, talk to it, what's going on with Def Leppard? You get some instantaneous answers. It wasn't the way it was. So I was very involved in music. I missed him. I wonder what happened to him. I didn't know a lot. I mean, we heard about the accident. We knew that. And we just thought, well, that's it. That's over. There's no band. I mean, they don't get another drummer. And after a while, you're just busy in life. They forget. People forget. And you're like, well, that's horrible. A year. Think about a year. Think about used to be back in the day, some bands would put out 2 and 3 albums in 1 year. You had to keep putting albums out and go back on the road. I mean, AC/DC did this early in their career. I mean, they were so burnt out. They were putting out albums, hitting the road, constant touring. Well, Leppard was doing the same thing. Not as many albums, but they definitely stayed on the road. They believed in that workman, get out there, be seen, keep getting better. And that's what they were trying to do. And now they're not playing anywhere. They're trying to record. It's not working. They're trying to write. The bills are mounting. And to me, it's truly amazing that their management stayed with them. They at some point they had to be thinking, man, we have sucked so much in, we almost have to go with them a little further now. But there were those people in their camp that believed in what they were doing. They just felt like with Mutt in the project, with the talent they had, even if they had to get another drummer, they had to think this is going to work out. But think about it, 4 years, of waiting, start, stop, scrapped, the guy's drinking really heavy, partying down, different studios. And then, they start getting some things done. And then, Rick's coming along. He's got people helping him get this electronic drum kit, which is taken many different styles over the years. When I saw them in 87 in Atlanta, the first time I saw them, I had bad seats. I didn't care. I was just glad to be in the arena. That was the old Omni. And I've seen them 15 times. That was the first time that I saw them. And we had to have, they had big screens. It was great. The sound was great. But we did have some binoculars. And I spent the first several songs just watching Rick Allen. Of course, my wife's fighting me for the binoculars. She wanted to look at Joe and his ripped jeans on that tour. I was a big fan. My kids are big fans. They love the band, love the music. But, here he is trying to work this. And, to his credit, they say that he would stay in a room and just play until his feet were bloody. And he continues. I mean, he plays barefooted. You can feel the pedals. And, he has worked his tail off. He really has. He has inspired wounded warriors. There are people in the military who have lost limbs that have been inspired by the story of Rick Allen. He continues to do that. He's really, and even to this day, you can go look at an interview that's 3 months ago. And when he talks about that night, he tears up every single time. It is one of the most hardest things for him to talk about. His life changed that day to never be the same. In some ways, he found new things that were even great and better than he never would have found. But let's face it, he lost an arm. And I remember an interview or Joe was talking about an interview once. This guy asked a stupid question, and it's like, I said, Joe, was it kind of a blessing in disguise that Rick lost his arm? Because your music sort of fit the way he was playing on the next album. And Joe says, well, listen, I don't know how to answer that question. He wanted to say some things like, you're stupid, but he didn't. But he said, let me answer that question like this. Maybe this will answer the question for you, how I feel about that question. Basically what he says was, I've never forgotten this. And working in safety for years, I've actually covered this in safety meetings to impress upon people, listen, to be safe, because life can change in a moment. And he said, well, after he lost his arm, he said, Rick never wore shoes you tied up anymore. Duh. He wears flip-flops, little slide-in shoes and stuff, because, he'd have to have, somebody help or use his teeth or whatever. It's not easy to do. You can't do that anymore. And then Joe says something that was truly touches the heart, because as a dad and a granddad, I've done this. Every dad has done it, and if he's a real dad, we take our little children, we toss them up in the air and we catch them. They love it. You don't do it easy, and as they get bigger, you'll toss them higher. They love it. You could do it till your arms fall off. And he said Rick was not able to do that. So does that answer your question? Like, shut up. It's stupid. He lost an arm. What do you think? He was a fast drummer. You go look at those videos, and if you got to see them live, how fast he was. Totally different drummer. Yes, there's no way he can play like that now, but he's a dang good drummer. And it did change everything about it. But he is the Thunder God, and he is amazing. I love Joe's talking about them going to Donington, when they did a little club thing, and then they went to Donington, and it just, the appreciation for him from the crowd, it actually blew the hair back. The wave of that sound is amazing. If you've ever saw that interview of them talking about playing Donington, it was very emotional for everybody in the band. They didn't know how to approach it, but he said, I feel like I got to say something, but he had to reinvent himself as a drummer. Then he had to, had to work and practice and stuff. And then, get to the point where he could actually lay those drum tracks down for that album. He had to learn to walk straight again. You got an arm, you're missing an arm, you're out of balance. You'll walk sideways, you walk into walls. He had to modify his clothes. There was, learn how to dress himself, where that was easy before, now not so easy. Me and him are almost the same age, he's a little bit older than me. He's the youngest member of the band and always has been. And he's just a truly amazing and inspiring person. And you just think, you listen to High and Dry, you listen to Pyromania, and then you get to Hysteria. It's very good. It's just very different, and it has to be. They stood by him. They really did. And they said if anybody's going to say he can't play, he has to say it. The early shows before they ever went back on tour, which was again a long time later. They played with two drummers, if you remember that. I think 5 shows were scheduled, just in case there was a hiccup, to give him a little bit of help and confidence and let him build back up. I think the 3rd show in, the backup drummer's plane was late, and he was late getting to the show. He gets to the show. I think they're 5 songs in, and he just listens. And he walked up to Rick after. He said, "You don't need me no more. You got this." And what an amazing moment that must have been for Rick and for the band. It has touched a lot of people. It's an amazing story. And so when I saw them in '87 on that Hysteria tour and looking down and seeing that, it brought tears to my eyes. And I love this band. I was 15 years old. I told you I mowed the yard to get with my best friend who got murdered. I was thinking about him too. It touches me right now to even think about it. That we bought this album together. We love this band. We love this music. And then 6 years later, I lost him from that time, because this goes back, before. And I lost him right before I went to see the band. I didn't get to see them. He died in '86, and I saw Def Leppard in '87. So all this is still. In fact, this a true story. I was working third shift at the time at the plant I was working at. I came in one morning and we were going to get tickets to go see them, and I was dreaming about my best friend and him going to the. We were having a conversation in the dream about buying the tickets and going. And I was kind of half asleep, half awake, and you're tired, you worked all night. And I hollered at my wife and I said, "Hey, come here." When she come to the door of the bedroom, I was going to say, what I was going to say to her is, "Hey, don't forget to order the tickets for me, you, and Robin, I called him." And right as she got there, and I said, "Never mind." It just like it all flooded in. And I remembered he was gone. And I said, "Never mind." And my wife had knew by then that there was sometimes just because this was so tough on me, that she kind of knew without knowing. You just kind of know. It's what spouses, they just know each other. And so when I'm there in '87 and seeing them, it just all tied together, and it was very emotional for me. I'll never forget that show, the excitement. I've been to a couple of smaller shows. The first big arena thing, I think it was. I think that was the first time I saw Tesla, was there. I didn't even know who they were, and I covered them the last time, and I love that band. They're still rocking too. Love Frank Cannon. Love that guy. But watching this band and man, they were just killing it, all over the stage. And Rick's obviously doing it. They played all the hits and everything, the new stuff, was still playing a lot. They were still playing a lot from High and Dry on that tour as well. They had, of course, the Pyromania stuff and then the new songs. It was a long show. It was a great show. I love that Clint Eastwood, the four sides, the curtains come down, doing a stage fright. And what an amazing, of course, the drum riser would turn. They ran to different sides. It was in the round, and they run to different. They're all over the place. It was a workout just for you to keep up with them. I can imagine how in shape they were at that time, running around like that. There's no way you could do it nowadays. You'd have a coronary. And so it's, there's just, a band is gone. They're gone. They're millions of dollars in debt. Millions. And we'll get to Hysteria the next time. But they go on tour. And they have the thought, does anybody even remember us? 4 years is a long time. 3 or 4 years. By the time I saw them, it was 4 years. That's a long time in anything. It doesn't matter who you are. You're gone that long. Think about it. All your fans have gotten older. The new fans might not even, they might not even be fans. You're off the scene. They're still playing you on the radio, but you're not out there. You're not out there selling the T-shirts and the programs and playing the music and doing radio interviews and TV interviews and, people seeing your bus go down the road and all that stuff and on the marquee and all that. They didn't have that. That was missing for all those years. And I remember when I heard that they were bringing that Hysteria album out, and I remember thinking they're still around. And I had a new friend, and my best friend was murdered, and I worked with this guy at this little mill, and he loved. We like the same kind of music, kind of a lot of the same kind of music. And I remember going up and telling him, I said, "We got to go. We got to go." He said, "Absolutely." And it was me, him, and my wife. And he had a friend from back home in North Carolina. And she drove down, got stuck in the traffic, and heard the whole show from the street. And here's another amazing fact about when we did see them. We actually got rooms on the band floor. I don't even know how that happened. The security was really checking us out. Like, we went up and checked in. We put our stuff in. But when she got there and she said the floor, they said, "That's impossible. That's the band's floor." I noticed all the food and stuff out. I thought, it's Atlanta. They really go all out down here. I didn't know it was on the band floor. And we didn't know till after the show when we met up with her and had some late dinner and talked about the show and hated that she missed. And that's what she told us that. But she had to prove They escorted her up to the room. We never saw the band. We saw some of the roadies and stuff, but we never saw the band. Of course, after the show, they moved on to the next city anyway. Would have had to have seen them pre-show, but we were we were down there, and it was at that show that I kind of figured out how they got to the stage. And of course, they revealed that years later. But I knew that they weren't already out there. I mean, and and they didn't come walking in. Although Rick would do that, apparently, dress up like an old trucker or whatever, and walk on down. He got away with it, but they come in the laundry baskets. If you remember the story, they were down in the laundry baskets, and even Robert Plant wanted to help be like a roadie and help push them in one time. He did that. Became like this running gag. And of course, the 365 Club, or whatever they called it, debauchery underneath the stage. They talked about that as well. It was crazy. But we'll get to that the next show. But when you're talking about Pyromania, it's a miracle. It really is. This band that had so much happen, had all the promise, that they were able to recover from that and become an afterthought in musical history, to me is truly amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And when I told you, I was so excited to go see them. And there's that unknown. And they had to sell 3.5 million albums just to break even. Now think about that. I mean, if you sell 1 million, they go, great job, great success. Let's get back in the studio. We'll do another one. Or maybe you do a couple of million. Who the heck sells 3.5 million albums? Anyway, it doesn't matter if you're putting an album right back out. How many do that? and then after the amazing success of Pyromania, being away for 4 years and being able to do that, it was tight. I mean, at first they didn't think they was going to make it. He finally got to about 3 million, and which is amazing. But they're still sweating because they're still in debt to the record company. And their thought was get right back, in the studio and do another. And then we'll talk about that next time. The rest is history. But is Pyromania way different than Hysteria? Absolutely. Absolutely. And really, if you think about it, every album they have is very different. There's really no sameness to it. I guess I would say Euphoria was pretty close to being kind of like the Pyromania a little bit. It was kind of Hysteria and Pyromania kind of mixed together, as they try to get back after Slang and kind of get back to the roots of what they were doing. But this album, Pyromania, stands on her own. It's not a bad track. It rocks all the way through. It changed the musical landscape. Mutt Lange, the genius that he is, did it again, and and would do it again and again. And they'll always be associated with that. He's the unofficial sixth member of the band. And I think I told this last time. I'll tell a couple of stories before I get off here. But, he doesn't like to be photographed, never has. And of course, I know he blew it, had the affair and all that. Not the first guy to do that in the rock world. But of course, was with Shania Twain, that whole deal. Well, while they was with Shania Twain, I went to a lot of Falcons games. She was brought in to sing the national anthem. And I told my wife, I said, he's got to be here. He's not going to be not here. And I was able to spot him standing like an FBI agent with sunglasses on in the Georgia Dome at the concourse entrance. He was just peeking around the corner watching her sing. And then she went right back and gave him a big hug, and they walked. I said, that's him. And so, but I remember that it was again, you didn't have a lot of internet kind of, was kind of coming online. I really didn't get heavily into internet until, late 80s or really in the early 90s. But I remember looking for the book, Animal Instinct, that they wrote. And I was having a hard time finding it. And of course, that book, I still have it. I need to get the new book. I've done another one. But there were pictures of him in there with the band, behind the scenes stuff. And I really wanted the book because I love the band. I wanted the story, but I wanted to see a little bit more about Mutt. And I was in Atlanta at a Tower Records store. I used to go to a couple of different stores down there, Total Records, Tower Records, and was on a first name basis. A lot of people, I was in these places all the time buying music. But I was at Tower Records down off, I guess that was Peachtree, if I remember right. And I was looking through the book section. They had one copy, and I found it. I'll never forget holding it up and telling my wife, I found it. I found it. And she's just like, well, great, but she wanted to look at it too. But she was always sweating when I went into a record store because she knew it was very hard for me not to buy too much. So I love the band. I like their, as I said last time, their Steel City kind of, that working man's, their parents were hardworking people. They weren't lazy do nothings. They were hard workers, and maybe Steve's dad, he's a hard worker. I wish he'd have been, helped his son more, because I think there was a dynamic there we'll talk about next time that was unfortunate for Steve. Steve just had some trauma there that he never could really get over. What an amazing guy. And by the way, walking in and playing Freebird for his audition, love that. But they were hardworking, industrious people who, that's all they knew was hard work. And they instilled that in their kids. Their kids said, listen, we got two choices to get out of this, living here in Sheffield. You work in a mill or you get out of town. And they just decided, they did that work. They went to work, but they decided they wanted to use their talents in music to get out and, be something else, which is always what you want for your kids. You want them to do something, fulfill their dreams. And they have done that many times over. A lot of the parents are deceased now because they're older. I think there might be a couple living, but, a lot of them have deceased. But they were huge supporters of the band. In fact, Joe's parents, gave him some money to get the first EP printed. They always supported their kids. They helped them, they were there to support them as they worked and put down money for instruments and stuff. And you can't leave those people. You got to have your supporters in your camp if you're going to make it at anything in life. And certainly theirs did. And I can still remember, I think it's very touching, the first time that Joe played Love Bites for his mom and she cried. And that's just something you won't forget right there, that your parents they just have this unique bond with you. And, they want you to do good. They don't want bad things for you. They have, become superstars, and they're still doing it. And they've been around since basically 1978 as a band, and they're just still going, and they're still going, and they're getting ready, to hit another big tour, and pretty amazing. But all of it could have stopped right after Pyromania. They could have become the afterthought, and they didn't. Pyromania changed them. It turned them into superstars. It had, it was perfect timing, like a lot of bands for the MTV era. The videos, the constant playing of those videos definitely helped them. Their playing, their good looks, their talent, all that stuff, having great management at the time who really believed in them and were willing to pour a lot of trust into them to get this done. And they did. And, that takes a tremendous step. When we think of the cutthroat record companies, I'm not a big fan. And I'm sure the record company was giving these managers a hard time, but they were they would have to say, listen, show us something. We got to see. They would give them something. They say, okay, that's good. That's good. I like that. I'll go back. And the pressure of that, they're sleazy. I'm sorry. Most record companies are, if not all of them, are very sleazy. And they just use bands up and they steal from them and everything else early on, especially. They get bad deals starting out, bad deals. And, everything comes out of your pay. All of it. That's just the way it goes. But they hung with them and believed in them. Their parents, I'm sure, were great sources. But there were going to be times they didn't think, can we even do this? It had to be like, and to overcome all that is pretty amazing. And I'm glad they didn't make Pyromania 2. Because they needed to grow. They were a different band after that, and they would never be the same. And it's just, you are what you are in a time frame, and then your life changes and your circumstances change. People die, your experiences, things happen to you, and that plants its fingerprint on your life. And those things happen, and it happened for Def Leppard. And, I hear all this stuff. There's people that don't like them. That's fine. Nobody's supposed to like everybody. But I'll tell you what, they they inspired this young man at 15 years old to live dreams, to get through tough times. It was their music and a couple other tracks from other bands that helped me get through the loss of my best friend, and I'll be eternally grateful for that. I mentioned last time we were talking about Tesla with a show 2 shows ago. The song "Changes" in Mechanical Resonance was a song that really helped me get through that. And as I said last time, Def Leppard has introduced us to a lot of bands. They've brought on the Teslas, the Queensryche. They've brought bands out and helped them. They have paid that back. They know how they were treated. They know the rock royalty that helped them to get out there, and they have returned the favor. They're well respected. And for those that don't like Phil Collins, the great late Randy Rhoads said that Phil Collins was going to be a superstar. You know why he said that? Because he said he works his butt off. He does things when the lights are not on to become better, to get better. And he said, and Rudy Sarzo shares that story in his book, Off the Rails. And so if Randy Rhoads could see that, he could say, and again, he plays like Phil. He's not supposed to play like anybody else. He's been a rock for them. And I love Vivian being in the band. I hate what happened to Steve. Very, very sad. Of course, we'll have to get through Hysteria Tour and album to talk about that. But that's Def Leppard Part 3. Part 3 will be next week. And if we don't have things that mess up on us, we will do Part 3, and we will cover all things Hysteria. And we'll also dive off into things like a little bit, about Steve and some things that happened on the Hysteria Tour. A little bit about the shows I've seen them at. I saw them 4 times, maybe more. I'm trying to remember. I saw them 15 times. Maybe I saw them 4 on the first run. I think then I come back around because they come back in 88, 89. I'll still say, doggone it, they should have released the 7th single from Hysteria. I'll say it. I know they just didn't want to stay on the road anymore, but Love and Affection should have been a single. Re-release that as a single, boys. Do something special with that. Great song. But that's it, Def Leppard. If you're a fan or not a fan, if you hung around, you're watching, listening, maybe you're a fan. Definitely, if anybody wants to come up and talk about that, next time let me know. Email me. We got a new email. I'm supposed to have my banner up, and I didn't put it up, but I will. But it's SFP Podcasting. So 2 P's there. SFP Podcasting at gmail.com. SFP Podcasting at gmail.com. Email me. Be glad to have you come up and talk about your experiences with them. I just feel like we've kind of grown together as we went on this journey, and it's a part of the fabric of my life. And I remember, I'll say this, I took my 2 sisters, and they've never forgotten this. They were, I'm trying to think how old they were, 10 and 6 or something. After I had seen them, I went back, and at the Omni again, they came back around, and I took them to see them, and they've never forgotten that. They love the band and love the music. And my baby sister, who's quite a bit younger than me, about 15 years younger than me, she still talks about that. And never been to the big city. We stayed up in the Omni and had a lot of fun, and it was great family time. Mom and dad divorced, and it was, some people, you should have taken them to the show. Well, they had fun. There was nothing bad happened. It was a clean show. And, and things, changed from Pyromania to Hysteria, even how they looked on stage. You grow, you change. Steve's look radically changed. Joe changed. You look at Joe from the Pyromania tour, and and by the way, let me say that before I get off here. What a genius idea. They were saying it had no money yet. They started the tour, it had no money. Phil Collins played in a pair of camo shorts and a tank top, which got stolen at one point, I think. They had no clothes. I mean, people think they had a lot of money. They went to some, thrift stores and stuff. And Joe finds those leather pants, and he has I don't know if he already had it or bought them, the cuffs that he hung on them, and the Union Jack. That became a merch dream right there. They still sell that. And who can forget him jumping off the riser in that outfit, and because he had dark hair, and this tour it was kind of a dirty blonde look, as he got into this, and then later on they had the mullet going on. So Joe's looks changed, Steve's looks changed a lot. Some of the other guys not so much, but it definitely took a turn. I mean, all the years later, and what they look like as they got in a few years older, and that's just what time does to us. But I didn't see them on the Pyromania tour, but I can tell you at the end of, I'll never forget all the shows I saw them, was Steve Clark coming out with the last for the entre, the encore, the hat he would put on, the British flag draped over his body, no shirt, obviously, and a Heineken in his hand as he come out, Mr. White Lightning himself, and every show. That's what he did. That's how he come out for the encore. And they usually do a couple of songs. I think that was Photograph and something else. And it was amazing. So anyway, Def Leppard Part 2, Def Leppard Part 3 coming up. Hope you enjoyed that. I didn't get into too much of the stats tonight into the album. I think enough said. 100,000 copies a week at one point. Just truly amazing. Of course, they've had reissues and stuff. But again, Pete was rhythm guitar on all tracks. He didn't do none of the leads. And in fact, on that album, Phil did guitar solos on tracks 1 through 3, 6, 7, and 10. And so, Steve did some, and he just didn't want the heavy load of that. He didn't want that load. Phil ate it up. But what a band. They also had, I thought was interesting. I was looking at this here a while back. Thomas Dolby come in and got a credit. But credited as Booker T. Boffin for the keyboard. So they had some people that come in because this is when they really started getting into the other sounds, right? Adding some things in, which really showed up in the next album. Of course, not only Mutt Lange, but Nigel Green, Mike Shipley. These are people they've worked with for decades in the band. But yeah, Satori did the concept, the design, and that started a great relationship between him and the band as they were playing, or him designing those album covers. And I'm still going to say album cover, by gosh. And the reissue, the deluxe edition set, they added in, of course, some songs from High and Dry, and I've always liked that they still play Switch 625. I said that last time. I'm glad that they've kept that around. It's a great time for the guitarists to get together. I've always loved that. I just love that. I like the way they come up with that. I don't know who decided that. Wasted. They've been playing Wasted a lot more. The Leadbetter show, or whatever they called that, the club they were trying to help, that's a great 1 hour show. Golly. That harkens back to the early days of the band. And that's been released. Of course, one of the early recordings was released from them. And they're not a band that keeps a lot in the vault. They found that. They didn't know they had it. Everything that's in the vault is put out. There's not. I think I heard Prince one time. He has thousands. Well, Eddie Van Halen, thousands of demos, tracks, little bits and pieces. That Leppard pours it all out. There's nothing in the vault. It's like Geraldo Rivera shows up. And he opens up the vault. Oh, it's empty. Once again. But that they believe in working and putting it out there. They don't hold stuff back like that. Anyway, I'm Dave in the AM, Cornbread Man. Thanks for watching Southern Fried Patriots podcast. We're also known as Cornbread Nation, Wolf Nation. That show was supposed to debut tonight. Me and Paul got a little discombobulated, but we will soon, very, very soon. And another special show, we're going a little play on words that we're going to do different from what we did before. We'll talk about that soon. And just tonight, if you're into true crime and a really old story, I've got a special guest coming in December 22nd at 7 p.m. We'll be talking about that soon as we announce it. And it's a very old story. I've been to the grave of this young girl, and we've been talking about it recently, and people asked me to kind of revisit it. And I just talked to the aunt, and we've got that set. And she will be back again. She will just be a one-off. One show will not get the story out. And her ongoing fight that she's going through with different organizations to defend the honor of the young girl. So I'll give you more details later, but be looking for that December 22nd. It's just a little bit of ways away, not even 2 weeks, and we're looking forward to it. It's a downtime for me from work, and it just fit her schedule. And with the first podcast in Georgia to ask, so she thought it was kind of weird. The story is from Georgia. Have a great night. God bless. Thanks for being patient. Sorry for the delays. We hate it too. I battle through it. It makes me mad. We do the best we can. Sometimes things just happen. And what do? You just fight through. It's like tonight, there was delays. I wasn't not just sitting here, not going online. The powers that be, whether it's equipment, the social media site itself, or internet, it's just one of those things. Sometimes you go through crazy stuff like that. The other night I lost power. I'll go weeks at a time and not have any problems, and I'll have problems. Give us a like and a follow and share. Thank you to those that said they did. No matter what you're coming in on, we appreciate that. It helps us to boost, especially YouTube. We need to get that up a little bit. It's a great platform, except you got to watch what you say. But I don't think anything tonight is controversial. And we'll see you soon. I'll decide what song. I'll probably go out with a song that me and Paul does for our show on Saturday. But I like the song so much, I'm going to play it going out. Cornbread Man and Biscuit Boy. Have a great evening. God bless. We'll see you in the morning for the Cornbread Man morning show, if all goes well, 6 a.m. And we'll kick your Friday off. Get ready for the weekend. We got shows all over the weekend. We'll have Friday night shows, Lord willing. And thanks for staying with us. Take care. God bless. We'll see you soon.
Like a freight train wheel. Cornbread man, biscuit boy, talking like love and southern joy. Cornbread man, biscuit boy, raise your glass, make some noise. In the southern drawl, stories thick like the cypress tall. Radio rebels riding wild and free, shouting truths like a storm at sea. Hey, can you feel that beat? Boots on the floor. Make some noise. Tells the dirt roads, whiskey skies that cut through the night like fireflies.
southern people, like a small town, nothing's real. Mama's still doing wrong, don't tell the preacher. Nothing really changes except the weather.